Hello and welcome to another Source Gaming discussion. I'm your host Nantendrix, and joining me today is Triss.
Hello.
And we are here to talk everything Hyrule Warriors. So TGS was just the last weekend from when we're recording, and it was just chock-a-block full of various content around games that we've seen, a couple new announcements, but for us specifically, Hyrule Warriors was the big thing, as it was our first actual gameplay footage of it, and not only did Tecmo Koei themselves stream it, but then Famitsu streamed it a day later with even more footage, covering a lot more than I expected them to, I'm going to be totally honest.
Yeah. We thought we had a lot to discuss with just a reveal trailer to this game. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. There's a lot more here. It's kind of thrown my own schedule, both of our schedules in fact, into disarray, as we were both working on videos for Hyrule Warriors that basically needed rewrites almost immediately after the first stream.
Yeah.
And then extra so after the second stream. And rather than waste time doing that, I figured it might as well just have the two of us come together, talk about what we saw, talk about what we think we're going to see, and just speculate based on all of the new information we've got. It's like, this is going to be an impressions, a speculation. This is going to be everything Hyrule Warriors from the two of us.
This is an ultra discussion.
Exactly. So, yeah, I guess first impressions of the actual just game itself. We'll just start on that, and then we'll move into characters. So, first impression of the game itself. What do you think from the actual gameplay we've seen?
So, right off the bat, I think the first thing that just caught my attention, not even a full 30 seconds in, Lynx's shield surfing attack. He just accelerates. It is really funny. And I can't stop thinking about that. I love the fact that despite how much they're trying to keep this very, very accurate to Breath of the Wild, we still have like the fun, wacky movesets that made Hyrule Warriors as silly as it was.
Yeah, it's still a Warriors game. I think it was even a character in one of the previous like Dynasty Warriors games who does shield surf. Oh no, I think Shadow Link told me this. I think he actually surfs on enemies, like he jumps on them and surfs like that, and it looks exactly like Link's shield surfing.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I don't know why I never thought about Link shield surfing as part of the moveset. I guess I was just thinking a bit too grounded. Like, this wouldn't work in Breath of the Wild. He's not on a slope. Whereas Warriors doesn't really care about that.
Yeah. The other aspect of that immediately caught my attention is just how true to Breath of the Wild this really feels. I mean, there's a lot more systems in place here than we saw with the original Hyrule Warriors, which was just made to celebrate the Zelda series. Now we have one properly taking place in a Zelda series.
Yeah.
And I'm really shocked at just how much is at play here.
Yeah, it looks so much like Breath of the Wild. Like, they've really captured the feel of it. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, they almost definitely are, in fact, just using the models ripped straight from the like Breath of the Wild game. After all, the first Hyrule Warriors, they did the same thing. They were just using models straight from Twilight Princess and Ocarina of Time 3D and stuff, and that's fine. But
really?
Yeah, so they in that game they were just the models directly from their games and then touched up and stuff so that they didn't look stretched out and bad.
Did not notice that.
But yeah, that works for this game as well, doubly so because it's already a Switch game. But I was very impressed, like when the game started up, I wasn't sure if it was running on the Warriors engine or if it was running on the Breath of the Wild engine.
Yeah.
Just from the way it looked. Like, the whole first few minutes when I'm sitting there when I was reacting to all of this was just like, which engine is this? Is this like, have they recreated the Warriors style in Breath of the Wild? Or like what's going on with this? I was very surprised at how accurate it looked.
I definitely think it is still a Warriors engine, just maybe not the one used for Hyrule Warriors specifically.
Yeah, I think so as well after ruminating on it, just because I don't see the reason why they would recreate the Warriors engine in the Breath of the Wild one. Just wouldn't seem counterintuitive.
Especially since they have basically Nintendo co-developing this with them, the Zelda team co-developing this with them. They have access to pretty much all the art, like, right away instead of needing to recreate a lot of it themselves. So it's very easy for them to stay in style, basically.
Yeah.
And I think that alone is what makes it so difficult to tell.
Yeah. But other than that, it looks very much like Hyrule Warriors, or a lot of the same mechanics about like the weakness point system for the bigger enemies. Lynx obviously slashing through. I didn't keep track of the specific combos, and I wasn't sitting here trying to figure out if that's XXY and XXY.
I'll do that later.
But yeah, it looks like a Warriors game, which is good, with Breath of the Wild UI elements, like when he's fighting the big monster, the name appears at the top with the health bar, just like it does in Breath of the Wild, which I thought was a nice touch.
I do like the fact that pretty much any larger enemy that isn't the Bokoblins or the Zophos are not quite bosses, but this basically means if you look in the original Hyrule Warriors, it would have been like the Darknuts or the Lizalfos or the Arrowfos. Like they're like the enemy generals. They're treated like mini bosses basically, which kind of makes sense given how hard it was to beat them sometimes, especially if you were underleveled.
Yeah, and I think that works for this one because it was like what the first discussion we had. Breath of the Wild doesn't really have bosses outside of the Ganon Blights and then like Henoxes and stuff. Yeah. So we weren't quite sure how they were going to keep the same boss system. And I mean, they're not, it seems. It's like anything that's like a big, powerful enemy will be treated, either whether it's treated as a mini-boss or a boss, will be all sort of treated the same with just the weakness gauge and stuff. And then it's all about figuring out how to do enough damage or when to attack when that weakness gauge appears. Like, will it be something simple, like dodging a moblin and having it show up, or will we have to do something a bit more complex, maybe with the rock golems? I forgot what their names are off the top of my head.
Oh, the Taluses. Yeah, the Taluses.
Yeah. Like, we're going to have to see for some of them, but yeah, it seems like all of the Breath of the Wild enemies are here. We've seen Wizrobes, Bokoblins, Moblins, the Taluses. I
mean, we even see all a bunch of the variants of them, so we're probably going to get quite literally all the Breath of the Wild enemies. And I mean, they have some new kits to them too. I mean, there was this clip in the TGS footage that I couldn't stop laughing at, which is the Bokoblins just blow the horn and then they all just chuck the clubs in.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. I thought that was a really neat thing. It's like they did that in Breath of the Wild, but it makes the enemy soldiers feel slightly smarter, like a bit more dynamic than they were. Like they're not just all surrounding you and all just sort of going for the one-off attacks. They're doing different things. They've got range.
For both the enemy soldiers and the NPC ally soldiers, they're so much more animated, which is really fitting to Breath of the Wild. But none of these feel like blank slates that are just meant to be hack and slash. Like they actually have more personality put into their animations that make them feel more lifelike. Yeah,
I think the one that really caught my eye when it was being streamed was the soldier who fell to the ground and is like hand up while the Bokoblin's about to hit him, and then Link accidentally yeets him through a tree when he's trying to rescue him, which gave me a good laugh because then the tree just falls down and collapses.
The idea of destructible environments too, because if we're going to touch upon that, is also really interesting, because I know we touched upon it a little bit in our first discussion with the encampment falling with the explosion, but now we have like the tree getting cut down with the single slash. There's a point in TGS footage where like the giant like skull rock that the enemies can come out of that gets blown up. Like I love these. This is really cool.
Yeah, it seems like anything that's not like a border to a level could be breakable. So stalls and stuff. Maybe not the fountain in the middle of that one level, but I suppose we can touch upon that later. I think it's safe to say that both of us are super excited still about this game, and we like what we're seeing. So let's
definitely
hone in on the pieces of it, and let's first talk about the characters. So from the TGS footage, we saw 4 playable characters, but only 3 of them actually got any focus. We saw Zelda was there in the game, in the Famitsu stuff, but they never actually swapped to her, so we couldn't really see what she did. We did get to see plenty of Link, Impa, and Daruk, however.
We even saw Link with a second weapon.
Yes, we did. So let's talk about Link first then. So his default moves look very similar to this Hyrule Warriors kit, the Sword and Shield one, but it's clearly not the same thing, hence as he has the shield surfing. And I was kind of very impressed that they decided to make an entirely new moveset for Link, as opposed to just copying the one that they previously already had and just swapping his left and right hands around.
Yeah. It definitely pulls from it, but I really do like what they did with Link's moveset, because it really feels like it invokes the things he can do in Breath of the Wild. So outside of, the shield surfing, I mean, he does like the flurry rush of all the arrows.
Yes.
Evidently that's not an item, that's actually part of his combos. Kind of similar to the horse or Epona weapon in Hyrule Warriors, where he actually had a bunch of arrows in his moveset.
Yeah, makes me wonder.
It seems pretty similar to that.
Didn't a lot of characters in Hyrule Warriors have like a special command? So you had like light, medium, heavy almost, and then you had like a special thing which varied based on which character was using it.
Pretty much, yeah.
And sometimes it was like a simple attack, and then other times it was far more technical, usually related around whatever their special gimmick was.
Yep.
And my guess is Lynx will be this bow and arrow thing where everything slows down and he just flurry shoots.
Yeah, I have a feeling. I mean, maybe Rivali might be able to do that too, since he's like
true.
He's solely archery focused, but
that seems to be. Well, it wouldn't surprise me if Rivali's was Rivali's Gale, but
that's true. Yeah,
we can get to that when we talk about Rivali. I think for Lynx, it's just this bow and arrow flurry slowdown stuff. But yeah, he has all the slashing and the usual and the shield surfing, but he can also parry attacks with his shield. And there's also
which is really nice.
Yeah, there's the Breath of the Wild dodging and flurry mechanics, which I think every character can do, because I think in that original trailer we saw Urbosa doing it.
Yep.
So,
but I assume only characters with shields can actually like reflect something back with the shield bash.
Because they brought up when Link had his spear moveset that because the spear's a dual-handed weapon, he can't use a shield, so therefore he can't parry attacks with it. Which I thought was interesting. I actually thought it was quite interesting that they gave Link a second moveset. I almost thought that they wouldn't bother this time around because of the fact that while Link can usually use, in Breath of the Wild he can use a whole host of moves, a whole host of weapons, I thought they might split them amongst everybody and everyone would just have the one core moveset that they focus on, but apparently that's not the case. Link at the very least has two. Potentially even more. He might have a club weapon, like enemy clubs, or dual-handed like claymores.
Oh yeah, like the giant swords. Yeah, like the much heavier weapons.
Yeah, potentially he could have Yiga sickles as well. Like because he could use anything, although that might be safe for Impa as well. Like there's a lot that can be done here, but I liked what we've seen so far of Link in there, and also interestingly, his sword and shields are counted as separate weapons.
Yeah, so it looks like, kind of like in Breath of the Wild, you can equip different swords and shields. So it looks like you can kind of pair them up differently. So if you want your Master Sword, but a pot lid shield, you could do that, it seems.
Like, I'm wondering what the different benefit, how that works. Like, because obviously in the previous Hyrule Warriors game, you just select from like a set of 3 weapons.
Yeah.
And they came specifically with each one. I wonder how, like, when Link specifically comes out there, will you just get an inventory and you can pick which sword, shield, or if you pick the spear, then the sword and shield part fades because you can't have both. Can you go into battle with just a sword without a shield, or vice versa? Like,
yeah, it's interesting. It also makes you wonder if durability on weapons is here at all. I don't think so, but
well, I think the durability is in the game, but I think it's kept for the special weapons.
Yeah.
So we saw in the footage Impa pick up the fire rod, and then they showed it off in the Famitsu footage, Daruk using it, which he looks very silly
they showed off using all tiny. 3, I think, actually.
Did they? I saw the ice and fire one. I don't remember the thunder one. But maybe
I think they had Impa use the thunder one. I could be wrong.
Okay. But yeah, so the fire rod, ice rod, and stuff, rather than them being a new weapon like they were in Hyrule Warriors, where Link had the fire rod, now they're special items that can only be used a limited amount of times. And this seems to be the same for healing items, because we also saw them have apples. And it seems like you can eat apples until the bar goes down to restore your health. But then you don't have any apples
interesting. And instead of potions like in Hyrule Warriors, it seems you can have healing items, and then given that we saw a bunch of ingredients get picked up, you can probably cook in between.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Rounds. They said that when you pick a weapon when you go into battle, that's what you've got for the whole thing. You can't swap mid-battle. And I reckon it's going to be the same with items. Like, you can go into battle with a set number of items if you've still got them in your inventory. So you can go into battle, you can cook food, take it into battle with you. And if you picked up a fire rod in one map and didn't use it, you can bring it into the next battle with you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
You're able to pick up enemy items when you defeat them and then use them against opponents in battle, which makes me think maybe we would have seen it, but I wonder if the clubs that get thrown by the bokoblins, if they can be picked up and like can be thrown back.
Think every item can be, because I know like at one point in the Game Live Japan footage, Link uses Magnesis to use the enemy hammer against it, and then it immediately picks it back up. Okay. I think I don't think we're able to like completely steal their weapons, but certain like item-like useful ones we probably can.
Yeah, okay. Let's talk about the Magnesis and the runes and the stuff then.
Yeah.
So every character seems to have access to it, and it wasn't super clear from the TGS footage what the limitations were, but then from the following footage on Famitsu it became very clear. Every character gets access to the 4 runes, that they have to be unlocked throughout the game, but everyone gets access to them, and they all function differently depending on the character.
Which is really nice, because it really makes them feel like it's part of their moveset.
Yeah, so with Link, the ice, the cryosis flings him up into the air, so that he can then shoot from above, and also enemies, it can act as a shield for enemies. So they're fighting against that one bokoblin, the big bokoblin, and they have him charge straight into the ice wall, which dazes him and opens up his weak point gauge.
Yep.
And then with bombs, Link obviously just lobs one bomb into a crowd of enemies. And then Magnesis, like you said, he steals a bunch of enemy weapons and then just slams them down into a group.
Which is also really neat too, because it seems the Magnesis seems it's very situational, where there has to be, well, metal around, like the boxes or like the Lizalfo spears. Yeah.
Because they seem quite powerful. When Impa uses it later on, she basically creates like a sword out of everyone else's weapons, and then swings them into people.
Full of personality too, which is really it really invokes what a lot of the characters are able to do. But it also tells us we don't know anything about Zelda's moveset.
Yeah, because that's interesting.
Everything we saw her do before was, or in the original trailer, was these runes. It's possible she still has a moveset based around these. It's just more it's just a more in-depth moveset for her. Because we do still see that she herself uses the Sheikah Slate, but nobody else does. They just have the runes. Yeah.
Well, that was the thing. So the runes don't become available until that little Guardian is unlocked. Although you could also argue that's also when Link gets the Sheikah Slate.
Yeah.
However, Link doesn't seem to use it, but the Guardian also only seems to follow Link.
Yeah, it only follows Link, and I think it only follows him in 2 out of the 3 footage. I don't remember when Link had the spear, if the little Guardian was there.
Yeah, I don't know, because it kind of acts independently.
Yeah.
It's like Link could easily outrun it, and then it has to catch up again. But I was kind of surprised that it doesn't just teleport around the map, basically.
I'm kind of glad it doesn't.
With you. I mean, you could teleport in that, and I could sort of see a little Guardian like that being able to warp to places. But it's, it is weird. I guess it's just one of the things not to think about. You just sort of be like, yeah, it gives everyone access to the runes. Just don't worry about the fact it's not around.
Yeah,
it's just a gameplay thing. But that's pretty much Link and how he's done. So let's
I would say we sorry, I'm getting really tongue twisted there. We could talk about a spear weapon. So if we want to keep on Link, we can talk about the second moveset we saw for him.
Sure.
That's really different.
The only thing I really remember from it is that he obviously stabs people, and instead of having the ability to parry, he has like this dash attack sort of thing where he like dives forward with a thrust. But outside of that, kind of just looked like his moveset from Breath of the Wild, honestly. And I don't know if I missed anything. My look over the second footage is a bit more fuzzier than my look over the first because of the time it aired and what I was doing at the time.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it was obviously an hour for me, so I've had to really look over it again multiple times. I love how fast the spear weapon is, though. It seems like it's really combo heavy and really like quick movement based. I mean, I love the fact that I do remember at one point Link kind of like pole vaults himself using it into the enemy, and it's just really clever. It kind of reminds me of Impa's the Naginata from Hyrule Warriors, but there's so much more to this. I think it's not as magic and spinning. It's a lot more like stabbing and flipping.
It's a lot more like what an actual spear could do, but with a bit over the top. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's good. It's cool that Link has a different set of weapons for that. And like I said before, I'm interested to see what else they give him. Because obviously he could have a dual-handed weapon like a club or something, but then Daruk already kind of has that. But then Daruk, obviously, he's a Goron, so his fight style's already going to be very different. Yep. But it does make me think, will other characters like the champions also be able to have access to secondary weapons, or is this going to be like the first Hyrule Warriors, where it's just like secluded to Link and Zelda, basically, who have secondary stuff?
I don't think the champions would get second weapons, just because I don't really think I don't think they've ever been shown to be proficient in anything other than their signature weapons. But I do think we'll have a segment where they pilot their divine beasts, and that might count as like a second weapon kind of thing, because you're playing as them controlling the divine beasts, even if it's just for one part of the game.
That would be really cool. That'd be really cool. Alright, shall we talk about Impa then?
Yeah. The one everyone's super excited for.
Yes. Yeah, so Impa looks to have a very ninja-like moveset, which I suppose is very appropriate for how the Sheikah are portrayed in this. That she doesn't quite use the Yiga clan's weapons. So far, Zelda and all the champions and Link, they're all using weapons and stuff that's actually in Breath of the Wild. But Impa seems to be unique. Like, she's got the small dagger and then a short katana. And then uses a bunch of Sheikah ninja magic. Mainly Shadow Clones is the big one they put emphasis on.
Yeah. It is really neat how she's like a mix between Sheik's moveset from Hyrule Warriors in terms of like that quick ninja-like movement using like the kunai and such. And then like Monkama's Koshia, the DLC boss. It's really interesting to see what they pull from for Impa, and I love her gameplay style just from what we saw of it. It looks really good for just the second character you get in the game.
Yeah, it does. But I suppose all the Hyrule Warriors movesets are going to be very flashy. I think what I'm interested in is the special mechanic, which seems to involve the 3 symbols underneath her health. And I believe it was mentioned that the more of them symbols you get, the more shadow clones you can summon. And then depending on how many shadow clones you've got, will affect how strong her super is. But they run on a timer, so if you don't do it fast enough, then her shadow clones will disappear and you'll go down a thing. Because I think in the Famitsu footage, they didn't intend... They were going to show off her full thing, and then as they pulled off the super, it actually ran out, and they had to do it again.
I do remember that. Yeah, I remember they were laughing about that.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting, because it looks like during her moveset, you kind of like pin one of the symbols on an enemy, and then you defeat that enemy, and then you gain the symbol. So it's actually rather complex for an early game character. Not in a bad way, but it's a matter of, it looks like there's a lot more technicality to her than Link, for example.
Yeah, so I wonder if you get to pin it yourself, or if it's just random, like one enemy will suddenly have the symbol on it, a symbol that you need, and so you have to then go after and defeat that enemy in order to get it. Or does like Impa throw a little dagger and that marks an enemy, and now that symbol's there and you have to kill the marked enemy. Like, I wonder what the process is.
It definitely looks like she triggers a move to pin it on an enemy.
Okay. So that might be her special attack. Her unique attack or whatever. I'm gonna start calling it unique attacks. That's what hers is. Link's parry, her throw, and mark an enemy.
That makes sense. Yeah, that would make sense. So I also think out of the 3 characters that we had a proper look at, I think Impa has the most fun with the Shiga runes.
Yeah. I think I'm trying to think. I don't remember seeing what her ice one was.
So Cryonics for her is it rises up. She jumps on top of it and she sits down like she does 100 years later, and she just rides it across the battlefield.
Okay.
I don't really know why, but Sheikah magic, I guess she just sits on top of it and you just control it as it just slides around and crashes into enemies.
People used to ride
it was
these
so
rocks
funny
around town all the time.
It's exactly like that though. It's really funny.
I saw her I saw her Cryonics one where she freezes a group of enemies and then wails into them.
Oh, the Stasis.
The Stasis, sorry, not Cryonics. And then the arrows appear behind them and they all get shot. They all get sent flying into another group of enemies. Which I thought was really cool. Magnesis, we talked about, makes a big sword, and then bombs. Does she throw like a group of bombs?
It looked... So, I had to look at this again right before we started the discussion. It looks like what she does is she kind of... It looks like she buries it, and then hits an enemy on top of it, and then it launches up like a firework.
Okay.
So, right. Like I said, Impa seems like she has a lot of fun with the runes.
Yeah. She looks like a very fun character, although I'm a bit worried that her combo chain, her default one that they seem to pull off all the time, while cool when she disappears and the hat floats around and comes down, is going to get slightly tiring having to watch that every single time. Because I remember the first Hyrule Warriors had some chains that ended really flashily, but they're so easy to pull off that you end up just watching the same
animation pretty often.
Having to just wait for it, basically, which can be really annoying on a timed mission.
I do understand that, though. Usually, outside of like Girahim, you're usually able to dodge out of it. So that'll probably be the case here too. But I think that's also a way to kind of incentivize. Don't just use the standard combo.
Don't use the really cool, flashy looking one. It takes too long. use the plain ones. I do think Impa might get a second moveset. I think it's going to depend on if there are any other Sheikah who are playable, both from the Yiga and not, which we can talk about later. But in terms of like how many other weapons, I mean, there's the full katana, the wind cleaver and stuff, and then there's the actual Yiga sickles, which is what I thought Impa might have, but she clearly doesn't. She's got her own thing going on. But they're all potential items that Impa can use, and seeing as she's one of the starting characters, and in the first Hyrule Warriors she got 2 movesets, I could see her getting another one later down the line. Potentially the big katana.
Oh yeah, that's true. Even if since the weapon she currently has isn't a weapon that's usable in Hyrule Warrior or in Breath of the Wild, it's entirely possible that she'll get something unique to her again that wasn't in the original game.
Yeah, that's true as well. I wonder how many of them we can potentially get. I mean, there's one off the top of my head for a character that we haven't seen yet that I think is a weapon that makes sense for that character and wasn't usable before by anyone else. But I wonder what other movesets we'll get that are like that. Because I could easily see many characters fitting into the molds of existing weapons.
Right.
But obviously that doesn't have to be the case. They're not limited by that.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
So, alright, any more thoughts on Impa before we move to Daruk?
I think I think it's really, I guess the best way to put it is surprising how just how versatile Impa appears to be in her moveset. As I mentioned, just because it's literally the second character in the game. But again, that makes me wonder. So you have Link with the sword and shield. You have Impa, which covers a lot more range for the most part, and is kind of more good at like killing crowds. And then whatever Zelda has, I think that actually is to create a really strong balance, because I think the 3 of them for the story mode are gonna, majority of the time, or for at least a long amount of time, it's gonna be just the 3 of them.
Yeah, that's the impression I'm getting. Those 3 will be in like every mission, even if you don't actually control Zelda.
Yep. So it seems like they're really made to balance each other out, to really make sure they don't feel too similar.
Yeah. And actually, before we move on off from Impa, there's one point that I want to bring up just because I know people will ask if we don't. What are your thoughts on Impa's design for this game?
So, I actually really love this design for her, not just because of, what everyone's saying, like, she looks like Paya, that's really neat. I like that we've always had different designs for the Impa of each generation. Usually either very stern and intimidating looking, or just an old woman. Yeah. So having an Impa that's much closer in age to Link and Zelda and more, I guess, personal to them, where she's, going through the same experiences as them, I think adds a lot to potential character development. So I actually really like that presence for her. This is the first Impa we've really had like this, and this is the version of Impa I would want in Smash.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I don't think there's any issues with her looking like Paya, especially because it's not exactly one-to-one and they're, like, related, so it sort of makes sense that they look very similar to each other. It's not sort of, it makes sense that they look similar to each other. But it's also, like you said, for this time, Impa is actually around the same age Link and Zelda are. Like, she's about 20, I think it is, in this game.
Yeah.
She was about 120 in Breath of the Wild.
She has to be younger or she wouldn't be there in Breath of the Wild.
Exactly. And Zelda is only, I think Zelda's 16 and Link's about 17, 18, so there's she's older than them, but not by much.
Yeah, she's not a motherly figure. She's, like, at best a slightly older sister.
Yeah, and we know she's actually the younger sister of Pura as well. And so that might also play a factor into how she's portrayed as being, like, much more cuter, I suppose, than normally. not so much the stern badass in this one. But but like, I think it works personally, and I was also a fan of Pyre, I suppose, so I quite like the design already. But I think what they've done here is neat. It's better that they didn't just outright copy the Hyrule Warriors design. A Breath of the Wild sort of skin tone, like not skin tone, Breath of the Wild skin, let's just say.
It's better they didn't basically just copy-paste an existing version of Impa and then make it work for Breath of the Wild. It's a new version of Impa that makes sense in this world.
Yeah, one that fits the already established designs of the Sheikah in this world.
Yep.
So, alright, Daruk then. So, Daruk, I suppose there's less to talk about with him. He looks very much like I would have expected him to look. He, big Goron man, swings his big club, rolls into ball, and has his shield, which I'm guessing is his special, his unique ability.
So Daruk's one of the champions I was really curious about, because I wasn't sure how they were going to make Daruk's protection work outside of just, okay, he won't take damage when he guards, I guess. But I love the fact that he can trigger Daruk's protection, roll, and make the Daruk's protection even bigger, and then just, like, launch out and just spread enemies everywhere. Like a wall, basically.
Yeah.
It's actually really creative. But, this does also answer the question of, maybe we won't get to play the champions until they become the champions. Like, this is very clearly playing Daruk, like, shortly after they meet him.
Yeah. That's
definitely a good sign.
Yeah, no, I wasn't expecting them, because I don't expect them to become champions until about halfway through the game. When Link gets his blue tunic, that's when they're all going to become champions. So I think we're going to get to play as them all pre-champion, but they still have their abilities like Daruk's protection, Rivali's Gale, Mifa's whatever, and
Mifa's Grace. I don't know how. That's the other one I don't know how they're going to do, unless she has like a passive
that's the
healing.
most interesting one. But I mean, Daruk, I guess there isn't much to talk about. He's kind of similar to Darunia, but because he doesn't have a hammer, he's in a big club instead. He just swings it around and causes big rock spikes to appear out of the ground when he slams down. And stuff. But he kind of plays how I had expected him to.
I think he looks more fun than Darunia. And I like Darunia in Hyrule Warriors, but I feel like he's just a bit too, like, slow and a bit too focused on the hammer more than other Goron abilities.
Yeah.
But I like how Daruk really feels like a good blend between a Goron and his giant club weapon.
Yeah. Although I like Darunia's gimmick in Hyrule Warriors, where he rolled into a ball, You'd go up to someone and he'd kind of lock them in place and do like a sumo slam into them.
Yeah.
Like, which Daruk obviously doesn't have because his special gimmick is his protection, which he fires off after, where he deals damage, builds it up, and then fires it off as a projectile.
Yeah.
But it's neat. I like Daruk, and I think he's a good indication of how all the other champions will play, because we saw brief snippets of each one. So Mifa has something very similar to what Ruto had, where she can basically have a big wave summoned and sent forward to knock enemies down via a long distance. And you're right, I don't quite know how Mifa's unique thing is going to work, because hers was obviously just you get revived if you fall down.
Yeah.
So I wonder
think
if they'll
it would
just
be
give
like
her something completely different like they did with Ruto.
Maybe. I have a feeling hers is just going to be like a sort of passive healing you trigger. Maybe for like 30 seconds she'll regain like a quarter of a heart every few seconds or something.
Maybe, but I think you'd need something to sort of limit that, because there needs to be a restriction, like maybe it's another bar that you fill up, or
that's
there's something else. Because usually, like, I mean, Link obviously only fires a certain amount of arrows in his, but I don't think there's anything that stops you from spamming arrows, basically.
Yeah, no, it does not seem he has an arrow count, which is good.
Yeah, and Daruk doesn't seem to have a limit on his protection. And the way it's set up, it doesn't really need one. Whereas Mifa's healing would definitely need something.
Yeah. I mean, unless she's very, like, made of glass in terms of, like, she can die in, like, 2 hits. I think that'd be a fair way to balance that, but...
Maybe, but I feel like that would really promote hit-and-run tactics with her.
Yeah. Well... we're drifting a bit from Daruk, so we can go back to Daruk for a bit.
Yeah, I suppose. Although, to be honest, I don't have much else to say about Daruk. I don't think there's much we saw from him that's massively that stood out a lot to me.
I do want to address the runes still.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's true.
So I do love what he does for the bomb, which is he just chucks a giant bomb that when it explodes, it turns into a bunch of smaller bombs.
That was the one I was getting mixed up with Impa's bomb one. Yeah, he's got a cluster bomb basically.
Yeah, it's definitely fun, and it really feels like it ties into like who these characters are and their personalities in terms of like how they use them. From the new trailer, we see him use Stasis, which seems to be, instead of like Impa's and Lynx where they use it and then they're free to use whatever moves. It seems like he uses Stasis once, puts like a giant flaming rock in the middle of all the enemies, uses Stasis a second time, and then makes it explode. So, neat, but definitely doesn't seem like there's as much control in that one.
It seems like a stronger move, like a counter, sort of, if the enemies come close to you.
And then, his Magnesis, I don't really know why, but he's constantly rolling in place as he uses it. And I think he's kind of like Impa's, where he's hitting them vertically with it, like almost like a giant weapon, but I think he's repeatedly doing that.
Right, okay.
And then, finally, his Cryonics, kind of similar to Link, launches himself in the air, but in his case it's for like the Goron Slam. Okay. Kind of like what Goron Link can do in Majora's Mask.
Yeah. So he goes up and then drops back down and knocks enemies flying all sides. Yeah, that makes sense for Cryonics. Okay, neat. I actually didn't realise that. I knew I'd seen the bomb ones and I'd seen obviously the Stasis one, but I hadn't actually seen the Cryonics one or the.
He only used it like once, so it was difficult to notice.
Okay then, yeah. Oh sure. But I still think Daruk's a bit more plain, a bit more vanilla in his moveset, I guess. At least compared to Impa.
It's hard to go up from Impa when so much of it pulled from like bosses and like characters you really didn't get to see too much of in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, and I think if we move on to the champions and speculating on what they can do based around what Daruk can do, I feel like his might be the most standard Musou moveset of the bunch. Maybe Mifa's will be standard because, like I said earlier, her passive ability of healing doesn't quite translate to a Warriors game, so they might have to come up with something else for that. But with Bosa and Rivali, I can see what they can sort of do with it. With Rivali especially, Rivali's Gale will just launch him up into the sky, and then he can have like an aerial-based moveset.
Yeah, so I almost feel like Rivali's moveset is going to be like a mix of the Archer users in Fire Emblem Warriors and Medley in Hyrule Warriors, where she has like the flight gauge.
Yeah.
I do know that the most recent trailer showed off what I think is Rivali's special move. So like you fill the gauge and you press A, which is he makes like a whirlwind, kind of pulling enemies into it, flies up into it, and then launches a bomb arrow.
Yeah, I remember that.
I don't know how combo heavy he will be, but I do think he's going to be about like juggling enemies, and I do think his moveset will be, outside of the explosives, closer to the Archers and Fire Emblem Warriors.
Yeah, see, this I agree with you. I think his moveset's going to be very much juggling focused in terms of that it will launch enemies into the air, and then he can use Rivali's Gale to push himself up into the air.
Yeah.
And then continue his combo chain through aerial attacks instead. I think that works particularly well because he's obviously a bird and can fly. But that fits what Medley did as well, and what I've seen them do in other Warriors games with aerial focused characters. So this is kind of what I'm expecting for Rivali. As for Urbosa, hers is a little more interesting because it's obviously Urbosa's Fury is all the lightning bolts
right,
coming down from the sky, which in Breath of the Wild was just a big wide range attack. But that doesn't really mean much in this game.
Yeah, that just becomes another like big attack.
Yeah.
I do know from the footage we've seen, it looks like she charges her sword with electricity.
Okay. So potentially that could be what her special thing is.
We do see what looks like the end of a combo in the newest trailer for her, where she does a little spin and then she snaps her finger, or she snaps her fingers and then lightning does rain down. And it does hit all the enemies, but rather than launch them, it kind of keeps them in place, hit and kind of stunned.
Okay. I think maybe that might make more sense than if she could. Her special thing allows her to attach her electrical properties to her weapons and stuns enemies with it. Or so I was thinking stuff like with Pirate Warriors, they've also got another electric-based user in that, in Nami, and she can create little. Where her gimmick is that she can create little weather clouds on the map, and then you can fling electric balls into them, and it causes lightning to strike. So you can set that up in advance, lure enemies to a location, and then set off the thunder strike there. And
that's kind of cool.
You're wondering if Urbosa had the same thing, where pressing the special button would be her clicking her fingers and setting off all her lightning traps at once, effectively.
That would be really neat, actually.
Yeah, I do also wonder if Urbosa, because obviously I would assume that the champions can also get different variations of their weapons. They're specific, so like they're not just secluded to their specific boulder breaker and stuff.
Yeah,
they can get different clubs and stuff. And I wonder if Urbosa and Link will have similar weapons, or if they'll purposefully lock out the swords that Link and Urbosa can have, so that they're more unique. Because they both obviously use sword and shields. So I would assume
could probably
Urbosa
only
can
use
parry.
Like, Urbosa could probably only use the ones found in the Gerudo region.
It's very limited, though. I feel like there's only two shields.
There's only like two or three. Yeah.
Falls into. Whereas Link has obviously like a ton.
But that also might add to the fact that they probably won't be able to use more than just signature weapons. Because we do know that Daruk's gameplay, even though it seems this is when they first meet him, he already has the boulder breaker or whatever it's called. So he already has his special weapon. That
seems a little low. I don't know what the right term is for that. Because even in Hyrule Warriors, every character, even though Darunia started with the Megaton hammer, he obviously got bigger and better hammers.
I mean, they may definitely do like level 2 and level 3 like weapons where it just looks cooler and crazier. Not really canon versions, but I think those would be saved for like side modes or something. Just because we know that was the case in the original Hyrule Warriors, where sometimes the canon weapon was saved for the level 3, but other times the canon weapon was saved was used like during level 1 or level 2.
Yeah, I kind of wish they would have saved them all for level 3, because They're like the Boulder Breaker is like Daruk's Master Sword, basically.
Yeah.
And Link obviously gets the Master Sword as his ultimate weapon. So I kind of wish all the champions got their signature weapons as their ultimate weapons as well.
It would be nice after like using them for a while. Like it's kind of like marking, like, okay, like you've got the best weapon for this character.
Yeah, like these are the weapons they get when they become champions or something partway through the game, and then they get these weapons or something like that from their respective leaders. But yeah, oh well, it is what it is. But those are the champions. I mean, do we want to speculate on how they would use this Stasis, Cryonics, etc., the runes?
I think it's a little hard to quite figure out how they would do this.
Yeah. Like, the only one who can really... I mean, they all do the same sort of thing. They launch the character up or a bomb. So, but yeah, no. Then, should we talk about Zelda, then?
Yeah, because Zelda's now, like, the biggest mystery. So
she's the last of the confirmed characters we know of, but we don't know at all how she plays. We've only seen her use the Stasis rune, basically.
Yep. So what we've seen before of, like, the screenshots of her throwing the bombs is probably tied to, you know, the rune of using the bombs. But given, again, that she does use the actual Sheikah Slate, I do think, and the official artwork also shows her holding it, I think that really is her weapon and all of her attacks. And so I don't think she'll be able to use the runes normally like everyone else. I think it would just be different combos for her.
Okay.
So instead of being able to pick which rune you use and use it at the right time, you would have to use the right combo for her.
Okay, that would be... That's interesting, but it feels slightly limited. Like, limiting, I guess. Like, Zelda, you have to work in order to get Zelda's special things, whereas everyone else just has to press the D-pad.
Well, I think that would be fair, though, given that Zelda isn't much of a fighter, and she'll probably get a second moveset anyway when she unlocks her powers of the goddess.
That's true. I think she's definitely guaranteed a second moveset, like an awakened Zelda moveset.
Yeah.
That's the one that we see on the box art as well, because it's obviously her in the white dress. Like in the same pose she was when she first unlocked her powers.
Yeah. And given that she doesn't really fight too much, and in all the gameplay we've seen that has her in it, she's there, but it's more just defending her. And we've seen plenty of from the trailers, we've seen plenty of cutscenes clips where it looks like they're defending her. So I really think, and just to make it fit in lore properly, they're just going to give her a very limiting moveset for her base moveset, and her more, like, proper Warriors moveset is going to be her second one. Yeah. Now, obviously, if there is an extra mode, that'll be awkward if you ever have to use the first one. But I think they would balance it out in a way where it still feels fair. It's just, you know, very obviously low-tier weapon kind of thing.
Yeah. I am wondering, when do you think you'll actually unlock the ability to use Zelda? Because obviously the only time we've actually seen her in the player's control is in that first trailer, where they're at Zora's domain fighting the Lynel.
Yep.
Other than that,
it was one clip.
Yeah. Other than that, we've only seen the Zelda as an NPC on the player's side. So she has her name and she has her own health bar, but she wasn't swappable like Link in Impa War. So, do you think that footage where she's fighting the Lynel is just something that actually happens much later in the game, or something that's happening in the adventure mode? Or do you think that she'll just become playable when the search for the champions begins?
So, that's hard to say, because technically, that scene with Daruk, I think that is still during, like, a search for the champions.
Yeah, and she's not playable there either.
I think she'll be playable when they need a third playable character, if that makes sense. So, like, we know she's playable with Link and Mifa in Zora's domain area. So maybe for some reason Impa isn't with them. Maybe Impa went to search for a different champion, and while Link and Zelda went to talk with Mifa, and then something happened, and she's doing her best to help, just so there's three. But maybe, I don't know. It's hard to say.
that is interesting that you brought up that Impa's not there. When they go to see from the first gameplay footage when they go to Zora's domain. That is very odd.
Like, it's not
every other footage we've seen of them meeting the champions, Impa is always there.
Yeah, the only real exception is like the cutscenes from the new trailer. Impa isn't there at all in Zora's Domain. It's just Link and Zelda. And the screenshots from like the reveal where we saw Zelda fighting in the Zora's Domain area, it only shows on the little like sidebar of which characters are playable. It only shows Link and Mifa.
Yeah, no, that's right. I wonder. I guess we can talk about that in much further on when we start talking about story. So that I mean, for Zelda, I agree. I think she'll get her unique moveset later on, and then she'll be the main focus for like the final chapters. I feel like. Yeah,
so I think she would continue.
Have to be. Yeah, she'll have to be because everyone else will be dead. But
she might get back up from Impa, but that's about it.
Yeah, but I think I have a feeling maybe Zora's Domain will be when she becomes playable potentially. We'll just have to see how her moveset is. But that's everyone we know is for sure playable. However, I would bet my bottom dollar that Impa isn't the last playable character.
I would be very shocked if she is.
Got more to come. Because it'd be really strange if Impa wasn't on the cover when everyone else is. And it'd be very unusual to have revealed everyone by now. Especially because we know there are other characters who are around in that time period who could be fighting. For example, the first two ones I wanted to bring up to talk about are the other two prominent Sheikah in the game, Purah and Robbie. So both of them were alive during the Age of Calamity. Purah's Impa's older sister. We know
Purah's already mentioned in the game.
Yeah, Purah's already mentioned by Impa as well.
And her theme is in the game. They used it in the TGS.
Like
when they were like talking. I think it was when they were talking about after the gameplay. But
yeah, I wonder if that theme will actually be used in like menus and stuff. Like when you're upgrading your skills and all that. Like you know how it was just. What was it in the first Hyrule Warriors game?
For like the
because you obviously use pickups from enemies to then upgrade characters and unlock their further combo potential and unlock skills. And I'm trying to remember what song they used in that game. I can't remember if it was just the shop theme or if it was a specific village theme.
It was the bazaar from Skyward Sword.
There we go. So I'm wondering whether or not this is basically that Purah's workshop theme is the theme. Used when we unlock people's skills and stuff. So,
but now the question is because that could tie into like Purah's lab being like where upgrades happen. Would that mean she isn't playable if she's just focusing on upgrading everyone?
I don't think that's the case. It might be a case that she's introduced early in the story because it seems like one of the early chapters has them going to the Hylian research lab.
Yeah, that's true.
And, like, we know that Purah was, like, leading investigations there.
Right.
With Impa and Zelda. So it wouldn't surprise me if she shows up early, and when she appears, that's when you gain the abilities to forge weapons and unlock stuff like that, so, like, as early as Chapter 3 or whatever. Yeah, but she doesn't actually become playable until the Calamity kicks in.
Because I assume... whatever chapter it would be where they're bringing Link to the Shrine of Resurrection, you would play as Purah and Robbie. Because they're they accompany the two Sheikah that took Link there.
Yeah, that's my main basis for why they would be playable, because
right.
Purah, Robbie, and Impa have all been stated to have been there and helped Zelda when Link got defeated, set him up in the Shrine of Resurrection, and potentially even protected Zelda as she went into Hyrule Castle. I just don't feel like the final chapters of these games will just be Zelda and Impa with no other allies.
Yeah, that'll make it kind of rough. Unless Zelda has that overpowered of a moveset.
Exactly, yeah. I feel like there's no reason that Purah and Robbie wouldn't contribute in this, as they're both Sheikah as well.
Yeah.
And Robbie especially is described as being like the rock and roll lifestyle scientist, doing dramatic poses as he makes stuff and has a big fascination with ancient weapons.
Okay, so basically what we're saying is his moveset's going to be like ancient tech mixed with Girahim because of all the poses and...
Basically, yeah. He'll have like prototype ancient weapons because he didn't actually finalize the ones Lynx used until 100 years later, but he'll have started working them already. And he will just have these really flashy attacks and dramatic poses as he's going through mowing down enemies. And then Purah, I reckon, will be much more like Lana is in terms of her mannerisms, because I think that already fits her character based on what we've seen in Breath of the Wild.
And people are already thinking Impa's like that. Oh, wait till we see Purah.
Yeah. Purah's going to be like the sort of definition of a character who's like an adult but acts like she's forever 16.
Yes.
Sort of thing, I feel.
Definitely.
So
she will be that trope.
Yeah. She's the one I'm most curious about on her weapon and her abilities, though. Because they won't give her the same Impa magic that Impa has.
No.
Call it Impa magic. The same Sheikah magic that Impa has, but she doesn't have the ancient weapon thing like Robbie does. Her closest thing is the Sheikah tablet, which is what Zelda already has.
Right.
Meaning that Purah probably needs something completely new to act. Something's more sciencey, I suppose, but I can't think what. What she would have.
It's definitely interesting to try to figure out what, because of that limitation with the Sheikah Slate. Obviously, she could have something related to the Sheikah Slate, but it can't be the actual, same moveset that all the runes of everyone using and the Sheikah Slate that Zelda's going to use. So we'll have to see there.
She has like a box on her back, and then like
that is true.
A flute in the concept art. I don't know if that would affect her moveset or not. I feel like the flute is just there because of the fact that she's a child and it's just connecting that symbolism in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
But potentially she has like a box of knickknacks or electricity or something like that she uses to... Like she has a box of electricity and then holds 2 prongs or whatever and is like electric-based shocking opponents and stuff like that.
She's running up to enemies and plugging them in.
Yeah, basically. Something like that.
I do think... So if we look at... So if we say Robbie's going to be using ancient technology in terms of like prototypes of like the Guardian Sword, for example, or like
Guardian Sword, the
sword. Ancient chainsaw or something.
Yeah, ancient chainsaw and the ancient axes were the two I was thinking for Robbie.
If that's the case for Robbie, I think Purah might actually be, as weird as it sounds, she might be remote controlling some Guardian-like thing. Not necessarily the little egg Guardian, but I think she might function off of she herself doesn't fight, she has things around her that fight.
Yeah, that was another... that was an idea, because people really want a playable Guardian. And I'm not necessarily sure it would happen unless there's like a special Calamity mode where you play as like Calamity Ganon.
We still have no idea what this little egg Guardian does either. It just follows Link and acts like R2-D2.
So potentially that is an option. Purah actually fights by controlling and riding on top of a sort of mini Guardian. Yeah. Like maybe they take the little egg Guardian to Purah. Like maybe that's their motivation for actually going to her, because they found this.
Yeah.
And that ends up inspiring her throughout the course of the game to make her own sort of Guardian that she then uses when she actually becomes playable later on.
I could definitely see that. If that happens, I really hope one of her moves is just picking it up, spinning around, yelling snap, and letting it blow the laser. Because that would absolutely fit in her character.
Yeah, it would. But I suspect both of them two are definitely going to be playable, Purah and Robbie.
Yeah.
So I'm going to move it on to you. Those are my 2 sort of suggestions.
That's fair.
I don't want to take all I don't want to take all of the spotlight.
I definitely feel like the King is going to be playable. So King Rome. From the TGS footage we see, he has a portrait, which doesn't actually happen in Warriors games that much unless they're a playable character within some reason. I think obviously it makes sense for him to have when he's a major character and he's probably like giving orders to all the soldiers, but I do think he would be playable because the king's, what was it, the king's tomb, or not tomb, but his burial ground, so to say, is on top of the Great Plateau. Yeah. And I assume that's why he's there as a ghost. I think it'd be really interesting if when, say, all the Sheikah take Link to the Great Plateau, he's like holding down like the back lines with the soldiers, making like a final stand there. Yeah. Even if he isn't playable until like literally the end of the game, I definitely think the King will be playable, and he might actually be the one to use like the Claymore, like the giant weapons, because they wouldn't be as heavy for him, because he himself is so large. He could probably one-hand those things.
Yeah, you actually have the exact same idea I had for the King. My exact thing was that he would use the Royal line of weapons, specifically the Royal Claymore and Royal Shield.
Right.
And he would be a much slower character than everyone else, being almost like a Fire Emblem Knight like thing, where he's just basically a massive tank.
Yeah.
That swings this giant Claymore one-handed through hordes of enemies, and would show up towards the end of the game, sort of to... I thought he might potentially die in Hyrule Castle, but the fact that his ghost is in the Great Plateau, potentially yes. Like, we know Akala Citadel obviously is the Hylian's last stand.
Yep.
Quote unquote, so maybe they go there to rescue him.
Yeah.
Like
I don't think the king dies in Hyrule Castle or in Akala Citadel, because there's, like, I don't know how there would have been the spot for him on Mount Hylia in Great Plateau.
Yeah.
Otherwise, unless he died and then they took him all the way there to bury him.
Took him as well, yeah. That's true. So I think it makes sense. I'm just trying to think when he can be playable. Then again, Daruk's also at the Akala Citadel from the footage, which...
And we know from the opening shot of the new trailer, we get to watch that place fall, which I'm actually really excited for. That's going to be really cool.
Yeah, I'm excited about that as well.
But I do think the king probably won't be playable until the start of the Calamity, and then you might have to play him through, like, the evacuations or the route to Akala Citadel, and then helping. Maybe he would be playable with the few other Sheikah taking Link to the Shrine of Resurrection.
Yeah, that's
just to
what
explain
I'm thinking.
him being
He'll have his sacrifice moment there, so that they can get Link into the thing. Or potentially, what I was originally thinking is he would fight the Ganon Blights while Zelda seals Ganon away. But then again, if he's not going to die in Hyrule Castle, then he can't do that.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was when Link and Zelda were escaping, Zelda already said her father was, or she assumed her father was killed, and they're
That's
already.
True, yeah.
So, I don't think she would run into him again at that point.
Well, when does she say that? She says that...
That's when they're... That's, like, the second to last memory. It's the memory before Link dies, when they're, like, in the forest, like, fleeing from Hyrule Castle.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But, I mean, if you think of it, if say, he does die on the Great Plateau, she, obviously, Link's still alive at this point, so she wouldn't have been to the Great Plateau, wouldn't have seen him there if he was still alive. So, you're right, she might think that he fell at Hyrule Castle or Akala Citadel, but he actually shows up with reinforcements on the Great Plateau.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
To protect Zelda and Impa and Purah, etc., and then dies there instead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely the king is one of the ones I'm actually most excited for. Not because King Daphnis is one of my favorite characters in the original Hyrule Warriors, but because I think there's a lot of potential for what they could do with his character to make him really interesting.
It's a shame that he can't turn into a ghost.
It would be interesting if he could fight in his ghost and old man form, but
he only becomes playable after he dies.
Oh my gosh! No, that's a second moveset.
Flying around as an old man.
Oh man, he fights with the glider specifically.
Yeah, I mean that would be pretty funny and pretty cool.
That would be.
Maybe it could be a secondary moveset for him.
Oh yeah, secondary moveset, death.
Yeah, King Rome alive, King Rome dead.
Oh my gosh. But aside from King Rome, the other one that immediately comes to mind is whoever Cass's teacher was. Because Cass mentions his teacher was a Sheikah that was close to the royal family and was jealous of Link's status with Zelda. So evidently was close enough to them and worked with them enough to also have songs about Link and the ancient hero and the champions and all that. I doubt that'll be a one cutscene thing, so he actually might be a Sheikah that could be playable. I don't know if he'll use, like, musical magic attacks, but that would be really interesting, actually.
Maybe. I am getting slightly worried of all of the playable characters, half of the cast being Sheikah.
Yeah.
But that's true.
That
for some reason I didn't realise he was a Sheikah. I guess I just didn't pay too much attention to it, and was thinking maybe Cass's master wouldn't be alive at this point, but if he's a Sheikah, then he almost certainly would.
Yeah.
I was also thinking the paintbrush Sheikah as well, potentially. You know, the artist one?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what his age is, but being a Sheikah means he could potentially still be alive.
I think he would be really young at this point.
He would be very young, yeah, but he'd be fun with like a giant paintbrush attack.
That would be fun. I do still stand by the fact that I think they'll do DLC of characters from Breath of the Wild, like 100 years in the future.
Same.
Where they won't at all affect the story, but they'll just be extras. Even if they pull a lot of their movesets from their ancestors, like Yunoba would probably have a lot of similarities to Daruk, but mostly just in the protection.
Yeah, I don't feel like
Yunobu
and Teba would be playable still, just because I don't think either are that popular and they are a bit too similar.
Yeah.
Sidon and Riju, I totally think could be playable.
Yeah.
Sidon especially because of how popular he is.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean,
There's
I think
could do.
for DLC characters, I think Cass, Sidon, Kilton, and Koga are like the most likely to be added. And Koga's an interesting one. So we obviously know the Yiga clan are in this game.
Right.
But Koga doesn't appear to be that old in Breath of the Wild, meaning that he's probably either a child in this game or not alive yet.
Yeah.
So, but the Yiga clan are still around, so presumably they had a previous leader before Koga.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm assuming he would be in this game. I don't feel like they would have the Yiga clan show up as just random ass enemies and not have you deal with them.
Mm-hmm.
It
definitely seems that the Yiga are going to be the main presence in the Gerudo area. In terms of like the main threat when over there, maybe when trying to recruit Urbosa or something.
Yeah, but having a new Yiga leader, an OC Yiga, like Koga's master, brings me into a point about the enemy side. Like, I don't think any enemy characters are going to be playable. I don't think we're going to get a Ganondorf version of this unless he's like DLC and promotion for Breath of the Wild 2.
Oh, so you're saying we're not going to play as the Ganonblights having to kill the champions we spent all game bonding with?
No, see, I don't think we will. My theory is that we'll each have a mission for each of the champions in their respective areas.
Right.
Where they're fighting towards their each specific divine beast, and we'll get to win that chapter of them making it to the divine beast. But once they're in there, it'll be like a cutscene death against the Ganonblights.
Probably.
Potentially. I mean, otherwise, it's going to be the typical Warriors nonsense of you'll fight the Ganonblights, beat them, and then a cutscene will happen where you lose. Which I kind of hope they don't do. I'm kind of hoping at that point your victory is that you made it to Van Radar, but then the Ganonblights kill you in a cutscene anyway, so that you don't get that feeling, but who knows. But yeah, with most of the bosses being random or regular enemies like Moblins and Hinoxes, and Breath of the Wild had this problem as well, Koga was effectively the only villain who was an actual character.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm wondering what they're going to do for enemy generals in this game, because it almost feels like the enemy generals are just going to be monsters who don't do or say anything.
Yeah, it's definitely weird about how they might handle this, and not that not that it makes the enemies feel less intelligent, but I guess it becomes harder to figure out what exactly they're doing.
Yeah. Like, Hyrule Warriors turned Wizrobes and Volvalgia into actual characters so that they could be thingy. And so I'm wondering if we'll get some actual generals, OC generals, on the enemy side, just so that they've got someone to fight. Although I feel like if that was true, we might have already seen one of them.
I think we would have seen even just a hint of one of them at this point, if so.
Yeah, because it just feels really random otherwise. But I still think Koga's master could at least be in it as an enemy. Probably not playable, but the leader of the Yiga master, the Yiga clan, will be a boss that you fight.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I guess the last thing to touch upon with characters, as mentioned, is the divine beasts with the champions, because I noticed in the newest trailer there's this really dramatic cinematic shot that I loved, which was Urbosa on top of Val Naboris looking over Hyrule Field is overrun with like hundreds of guardians. And at first I thought, oh yeah, this is just, she's waiting on top of the mountain with Val Naboris, like how they were 100 years later. But that's not the case. She's in the middle of Hyrule Field, because you can see Spectacle Rock in the background with its tower. And this is like a callback to or this is further evidenced by the official artwork for the game, like the giant key art, where Von Abortus is near Hyrule Castle.
Yeah.
So I seriously think once the champions reach their divine beasts, you're gonna get to have a scene playing as them, attempting to just destroy a bunch of guardians, like giant battles from the original Hyrule Warriors.
That
Even
would
if
be
it's just
really
the
cool.
one, it might just be the one section for each one, or maybe it's all of them at the same time and you swap between them to cover each of the areas, make sure they don't reach Kakariko Village or reach any of the further areas outside of Hyrule Field. But I definitely think it would be awkward to keep all of that only to a cutscene. It would be like teasing the player, basically. You know, all this build up for the Divine Beasts, and then it's only kept to cutscenes. I definitely think we're going to get that chance to play them in that one section. Like, it'll be special in that case. Very cinematic. But I do think that's a big surprise they have in store there.
I do think if they do that, then Calamity Ganon is almost certainly playable as well. And you'll be able. There'll be like a special mode, obviously, where you can only play as the Divine Beast.
Hopefully,
but also Calamity Ganon and fly around Hyrule Field.
Yeah,
and
that would be nice.
Summoning guardians and stuff like that, and all that. I think that's definitely a possibility. I actually think there's another regular character who can be playable, and that's Hestu.
Yes, Hetsu. And we know they go to the Lost Woods and Korok Forest as well. So
he says in Breath of the Wild that he was around 100 years ago. He says that was the last time anyone who wasn't a Korok saw him.
Yeah,
was 100 years ago. So he was there during the Age of Calamity. And you're right. They go to. We know that for a fact they go to meet the gate. Everyone goes to meet the Great Deku Tree.
Yep.
So potentially he lends them Hestu to help fight, and Hestu fights with maracas and throws Korok seeds. This was the other suggestion I was having for a character who has a moveset that's not based on any existing weapon.
Yeah,
because he would just be like the Agatha of this game, basically.
Yeah, the Agatha with the tingle, just the pure silly character,
the pure joke fighter who's just really fun to play as. And it would be our first playable Korok as well.
Yeah,
it'd be fun.
I can see the way they would handle it is he's the one that guides them through the Lost Woods in the story mode, so I could see him not being playable during the story, but he's there as a fighter, but you unlock him in a side mode.
Yeah, potentially. That's also a possibility. I just think of all the 4 characters we've named, I mean, sorry, not 4 because we've named more than 4. Of all the characters we've named, he's the one who I think is the most likely to be playable.
Which is such a good feeling.
Yeah. I just think he's got the sort of moveset that the developers have said they like. He's a unique character. He doesn't clash with anyone else. He'd have a fun moveset. He's around during the Calamity. I just think there's a lot going for him. I don't think they would pass up the opportunity to have him be a playable fighter.
And we know there's Koroks in the game too. Like maybe the reward for finding all the Koroks, like the gold Scatolas in the original game, in this case would be getting Hetsu playable.
Maybe. It's a better reward than getting all the Korok seeds in Breath of the Wild. So.
Yeah, it's true.
But yeah, I think that's everyone. I think that I think the roster, if not including alternate movesets and not including if the Divine Beasts are playable, I think the roster's only going to be about 12 characters.
Yeah, same.
So we've still got 4 more to see. Oh no, sorry, 11 characters. Sorry, we still got 4 more to see. A playable Guardian would be nice, but I'm not convinced it will happen unless it's part of Pura's moveset.
Same.
I was so sure that the little Guardian would be playable, but he's apparently not. So he doesn't even seem to be the proxy unless Pura actually gives him the ability to speak.
I almost feel like Pura's watching everything through him.
That's also a possibility as well. Although I'd rather she be on the battlefield herself. Yeah,
but maybe this is for now, and then later she will be on the battle, and maybe it'll tie into her moveset. Actually, we know it's not affected by the Calamity, at least not early on.
Yeah.
There's the scene in the new trailer, which is just like the first trailer. We see Link, Zelda, and Impa back at Hyrule Castle after the Calamity started, and the little Guardian's there with them. And its eyes still blue, it's still good, it's still on their side.
Yeah, I assumed it wouldn't be affected for them from the fact that it's on the key art, which clearly shows them all fighting in the Calamity.
Yeah.
Because you got all the Guardians with red eyes behind, and he's still blue, so I assumed he wouldn't be affected. The question is whether or not he'll survive.
Yeah,
and if he survives, will he be showing up in Breath of the Wild 2? Or will he be showing up, or will he just be never acknowledged from this point on? Yeah, I think that covers everything on the character side of things. But we have more thoughts on other factors of this game, like location and story, that we want to talk about. But I think we'll leave that for a second discussion, because this one's already gone past the hour mark now.
Yeah.
So, thank you everyone for listening to this discussion. Let us know what you think of our thoughts. Let us know if there are any specific characters you hope to see. If you think any characters we've suggested either won't happen or will happen, but you have different ideas on how their moveset will play, let us know. And yeah, just any thoughts you've got on the fighters and the characters. As per normal, all the patrons are on screen right now, $5 up. You can support us by following Patreon down below. We give early access to certain videos, and we have a special Discord channel for Patreon users where you can just chat with us about anything, Hyrule Warriors, Smash, whatever you want. And there's always the like and subscribe button. That's also just anything you can do to support sharing the videos, etc. goes a long way. So, and it doesn't take much time either. So, very much appreciated if you could. And remember to come back to the source for the second discussion as soon as that goes live. We hope to see you then.